The truth is that there is a study called epigenetics. And we learned through that study that all of these genetic-based disorders are not necessarily, we're not doomed to get those, right? We only have about a 10% chance of developing those strictly due to genetics. The other major pieces that play a role in us developing these disease processes actually have to do more with lifestyle than they do your makeup and your body that's based on your family's genetics. So if you live a healthy lifestyle, you help your body, you support it with the right kind of food, you support the right mindset, you support the right exercise levels and all those different things we've kind of touched on today. If you really support your body and go back to the basics of healthy living, then you're probably not going to have to worry too much about getting sick before you die.
Welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast with Coach Strick. Join us as we expand the weight loss conversation to beyond just calories and dare to ask the question, why does eating less and exercising more sometimes not produce the desired results? Here's Coach Strick to discuss this Calorie Conundrum.
Hello and welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast. This is Coach Strick, and on today's podcast we have Chelsie Ward. Chelsie, like many health practitioners that assist their clients through coaching and in searching for the root cause of health problems, was her own first client. She has a background in applied behavior analysis, and her study of the psychology of the mind has helped her devise successful behavioral intervention techniques to help others succeed in reaching their health and wellness goals. Her career as a nurse has given her extensive insight into the conventional approach to healthcare, and she has seen firsthand the negative effects to our bodies caused by the food industry and big pharma. Her investigation led her to receive certifications in functional diagnostic nutrition and biofield energy healing, having completed intensive research into how the body works, how food is medicine, and how God designed our bodies to heal themselves. Her focus is on wholeness in body, mind, and spirit. She successfully empowers others to reach their health goals by using a straightforward approach so they can live their best life. Let's hear what Chelsie has to say about how to die in health, not sickness. Chelsie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Coach Strick. I'm so excited to be with you today.
Yeah, so I know you work in, the health field as a health practitioner, and like most people in the health field, especially health coaches, they get into this field from their own story, from their own experiences. Usually they have some kind of health crisis that spurs them into kind of searching for the answers for themselves. Can you share your story?
Yeah, that was exactly me. I never really intended to start this business. In my mind, I was always an entrepreneur at heart. And I think that what really gives me a passion for this is you can see all the credentials behind my name. And I say that that's really not the most important part of my story. The most important piece is that I know exactly how my clients are feeling because I've actually been there myself. And I was sick in almost every organ system of my body, from everything from brain fog to heavy metal toxicity to mold exposure. I had severe hormone imbalance. I was actually perimenopausal at age 27. No longer having cycles or anything like that. I had a doctor who put me on a bunch of bioidentical hormones for that. So I was really severely underweight, malnourished at one point in my life. And then all of a sudden I'm on all these bioidentical hormones, way too much for my system, completely overloaded, ended up overweight. So I've kind of got that balance of I understand what it means to be underweight and unable to gain weight. But then I also have an understanding of what it means to be overweight and not really be able to control that as well. I experienced food addiction, which truly helped me understand the emotional side of healing, and had to go through a lot of emotional healing myself. And I had to go through a ton of detox just for that heavy metal detox. Part of it, I had a lot of brain fog. I had a lot of cognitive and neurological issues. So truly, you can probably see literally almost every organ system of my body, even my gut. They wanted to take my gallbladder at one time. Thank God I saved that. So I do have all my organs today. I'm the healthiest and happiest I've ever been in my life. And my mission is truly to just share the information that I've learned with as many people who will listen, because I believe so much that natural healing has an amazing place for us as humans if we will just open ourselves up to receive what nature is already providing for us on a regular basis.
Yeah, so could you kind of expand on that? You said, natural healing and nature. What exactly do you mean when you say something like that?
Yeah. I believe that God placed everything on this earth that we need to heal our bodies, and all we have to do is access that. And I think that we make health so like crazy these days. It's like we feel like we have to follow all of these rules. Is it low fat? Is it high fat? Is it high carb, low carb? Like, do I have to work out for an hour a day, or is 30 minutes okay? Or what is right for me? Is this keto craze thing for me? And we're constantly going and we're looking at all of these things as kind of a fix, when truly, if we get back to the way our ancestors lived, they were the most simple people. And yes, they had disease, but mostly because of infection and things like that. And they really didn't have the care that we have today when it comes to those types of diseases. But what we're seeing today is a lot of chronic disease. And that is just from simple abuse. That is from the world of technology that we live in, partly because we have all these processed and packaged foods and things like that. But if we'll truly get back to nature when it comes to nutrition, and I'm talking eating whole foods, things that were placed on this earth for us to consume, right, in the forms of plants and animals, and not being worried so much about grabbing that quick grab and go McDonald's burger or whatever kind of fast food thing that we have out there, or even that packaged food, right? So many people that I meet are grabbing a pack of crackers for lunch and they're not fueling themselves with whole foods. And even getting out in nature, if you asked about nature is a huge part. Nature has its own immune system, and it's so healing to the body. It allows us to free our minds. It allows us to escape from, just the world around us and truly become the creative selves that we are. And I think that if we just get back to simplicity and stop worrying about which diet is right for us and what we should or should not be doing on a regular basis, I think that we're going to see how easy it really is to live in health and stay in health.
Yeah, great. So on your website, on your About page, you have a sentence on there that I thought was pretty interesting. It says, "As my career as a nurse has given me extensive insight into the conventional Western approach to healthcare and see firsthand the negative systemic effects to our bodies caused by the food industry and big pharma." Could you expand on that?
Yeah. So this is one of those controversial topics, right, that I love to talk about. Sometimes I feel like the woman of controversy. And I'm not against traditional medicine. I want to first preface with that because I am trained as a nurse. I'm trained in, a lot of different traditional medical approaches. That's really where my background came from. But in that, and while working that, I realized that a lot of the things that I was going through in my own life were being experienced by my patients, and we were being told the exact same thing, right? And that was that medications and surgery are the way out. And the truth is that the more I started studying natural health, I realized that that was not true at all. I realized that, yes, there are times that medications and surgery are needed, but when we live in a state of chronic disease, that is not what we should be doing at all. We should be getting to the root of our underlying condition and figuring out exactly what it is that's causing these disease processes to take place in the body. I had heavy metal toxicity from vaccinations in school. And I never knew what was causing my brain fog. I never knew what was causing me to be a stuttering, stammering mess. I never understood what was causing a lot of these like neurological symptoms until I started studying heavy metal toxicity and realized that I was vaccine injured. And I had to clean up those heavy metals in my system to really even be able to function. The truth is if I would have approached that like a neurological disease or disorder, I would still be living with those symptoms today. But I was able to get to the root of the underlying condition and realize, no, this is heavy metal toxicity. the way that we get the brain back in order is that we get rid of these toxins and we help the body function right on the inside so it functions appropriately on the external world. So I think that today we have been conditioned to believe that big pharma is the way out, that a medication is the way out. And no matter how many commercials we listen to where we hear, this drug is made for this, but the side effects are this, and they are much worse than the actual disease process itself many times. But we still go to our doctor and we ask for those medications. And part of that is because we are in an immediate, let's fix it now mentality. Like, we have the world of technology at our fingertips. We want everything fast. We want it now. And the truth is that when we address this and allow the intelligence of the body to just heal itself, then we're going to realize it takes a little bit longer, but it actually will help us get to the bottom of our disease process instead of just putting a Band-Aid over it. And I think, like so many times, that's what traditional medicine is doing, is they're putting a Band-Aid on it. And it's not their fault. They're simply trained under a lot of these pharmaceutical models that just are not helping us as humans.
Yeah, so you hit on a big topic that I'd like to discuss a little bit, and that's the fact that, like, for you personally, you had this issue that wasn't being resolved by the conventional way of doing things, and so you kind of went out and searched for yourself. But my question is, how do you think we can get people like yourself that are nurses in the conventional medical way of doing things, are physicians or doctors, are in this pharmaceutical, conventional medicine type of mentality? How do we get them without them hitting a health crisis themselves, without them having something terrible happen that they have to find out the answers for themselves? How do we get them to start thinking in more natural ways, in more alternative ways, or at least believing in them in somewhat, because some of these people, they're just totally, all these, alternative ways of doing things are like completely out of their belief system, even not even, utilizing them. They don't even believe in some of these things. And so how do we get them to kind of, at least try out or test it maybe for themselves or for their patients and see that some of these natural things do actually work and can help their patients? How do we do that without them actually having to suffer through something to find the answers? Do you have any ideas of, what we could do for that?
This is a difficult one, and it's one that I'm faced with on a regular basis, because I actually have a sister who is a conventionally trained cardiac nurse practitioner, and she is completely one end of the spectrum and I'm completely the opposite. And we talk about this a lot. And that is the fact that, they're talking about these medications and how they're studied and all these things. And the problem is they believe in what they're doing. They see that they're making a difference. Yeah. But I'll tell you from experience, if you talk to these doctors and these other medical professionals that practice in a conventional way, a lot of times the treatments that they give their patients, they don't take themselves. So, for example, if I have family members and I have people in my life, and I have a lot of people in my life that are medically trained, right? Because I came from that background. If they have a medical crisis, they will pick up the phone and call me and say, how do I treat this naturally? They're not using their prescription medications all the time. They're not using the things that they were trained to use with their patients, that they give their patients every single day. When I ask them questions like you just asked me, here is the answer. They tell me that their patients want a pill to fix their problem. They don't want to change their diet. They don't want to adjust their nutrition levels. They don't want to deal with their emotions. They don't want to deal with any of the things that are driving poor health in their body. It's that give it to me now mentality. So I don't only think that the medical professionals are to blame here. I think part of it is the patient. And if you're walking into your doctor's office and you're mad because they don't write you a prescription, which I've seen that happen too, so that's the other end of the story, then you think your physician is a quack, right? Well, I walked in there, I paid them all this money and they did nothing. Well, the truth is maybe you didn't need anything. Maybe you had a simple viral infection that's going to pass on its own, but you feel like you need a medication. And I think that's sometimes tying the hands of our physicians and our medical professionals. And I think part of it is just they are trained. They are trained to believe in what they do. I remember being a vaccination nurse. Oh my God. And that is hard for me to say today. I literally had a job where I set up shop in these big box stores and I gave vaccinations. I did that for a living, right? And now today I have been vaccine injured. So I'm completely open to the fact that maybe this is not right for everyone. And I don't want to get on that controversial topic, but I really want to just say that all bodies are not created equal. And I think that we need to leave that open to the person that, is receiving this, I guess, medication or something like that in their body. But back to your question on the doctors, I just really feel like sometimes maybe it's not all them. And maybe sometimes it's just truly their training. And how do we shift that? I think it's just living it out. I think it's sharing our stories. I think it's just asking them questions and learning to listen to what they have to say. Because if we ask the right questions and say, have you tried nutrition with this patient? Like, what would you do if you could shift this patient with nutrition? And just really listening to what they have to say and providing the answer in more of a natural way to try to help shift them. And it's just little seeds that really will make the changes in the end, because we can truly, instead of being against one another, I think we can truly partner together and create something really amazing.
Yeah, that's a fantastic answer. I love it. And I got a couple of things from that that I'd like to bring out. And one was I was watching a conference or a talk somewhere on health. It was a natural practitioner speaking somewhere. And he said he was in an audience, he was giving a talk, and he had an audience of mostly physicians. And he asked the question, who in here recommends to their clients or their patients that they take a multivitamin? And like a few people raised their hand. And then he asked, who in here takes a multivitamin themselves? And then most of the people raise their hand. And so that goes to, say exactly what you were just talking about, as far as they're not taking their own prescriptions, they're not taking their own medicine. And they're not even recommending, stuff that they do just because it's not accepted in what the field that they're in. And so I think that's, an interesting, so I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people just think that a physician's, taking the medication they're giving people just as much as they're giving it out. And that's not the case most of the time. And the other thing I'd like to point out is I really liked how you answered in defense of the physicians, because I think it is really an unfair kind of position that they find themselves in. And you said that you talked about the old pill for an ill. People want the pill for the ill. They just want to get it in, and this fast-paced society and whatnot. And you talked about how we could solve the problem in reference to the physicians, client-patient physician relationship. You talked about that, but the other problem that you mentioned, and I'm going to ask you how to solve, is the idea of the pill for the ill. Like, how do we solve? Because we could fix the physicians as far as knowledge and educating them. But if all the patients are coming in saying, hey, I want a pill, and they come in and the physician says, hey, you need to go get a massage, or you need to do some meditation, or you don't need any medication, and they come out saying, well, that's crap, I want some medication, like, it's not going to fix anything. So, it's a two-part relationship, parts the physician and parts the patient. And so how do we fix that mentality of the patient, the average patient coming in looking for that pill for the ill?
I think word can travel really fast because we have social media today. We have, the internet at our fingertips. And I think it really just comes down to putting out the education on the fact that there is no quick fix when it comes to chronic health issues. the quickest fix is in getting to the underlying root. And that is a huge part of the message that I deliver every time I can. And that is that you're putting a Band-Aid over an amazingly gaping wound here. Like, it is not going to fix the problem. Even if you have a thyroid condition, which I work with people with thyroid conditions, Hashimoto's, things like that. If you have a thyroid condition and you are taking a medication that corrects your lab test on your thyroid numbers, but you're not losing weight, your hair is still falling out, you are exhausted all the time, the pill is not the answer. You're not getting rid of your symptoms. Although your labs may be coming into range, you have to understand that if you want to get well, you must address the root of your condition. And I think it's just really educating every chance that we get. And I just find that once people hear it so many times, it kind of like they have this light bulb moment. And the science says that someone has to hear something an average of 7 times for it to truly really ring a bell with them. If it's something completely, totally different from what they're typically used to hearing, then about 7 times later, they're really going to have that moment where they're like, maybe there's something to this, and just really start listening to the message that we're sharing. So I think it's just really educating over and over and over again on the fact that we've had it wrong all these years, that it's not truly in the pill. It is in addressing what is actually causing the problem. And it makes so much sense, to address what's causing the problem. If somebody gives an analogy, and I don't know who it is, but it's like, if there is a tack in a chair and you're sitting in the chair over and over, and you got this stick in your bum every time you sit down, and you're thinking, what is this pain in my bum? And you keep sitting in the chair, the best way to relieve the pain in your bum is to remove the tack from the chair, right? That is the root of the issue. So, and we have to actually consider that when it comes to our health too. It's actually the best way.
So what are some of the issues people are going to the physicians and maybe not getting help because they're just treating the symptoms? And what are some of the root causes of those issues that they're going to the physician? And how do you test for them? Or how do you find those root causes?
That's really good. So I can give you client examples. I think that might be the best way to do this. Yeah. And I can give you one that was pretty amazing. And she came to me with a PCOS diagnosis. She came to me with severe allergies. She came to me with, she basically could only eat about 4 foods by the time she got to me, because she was like having to take, Benadryl every time she had a meal because she was reacting. Throat was closing and she was overweight. And the doctors were basically telling her that she had allergies. They were sending her from specialist to specialist. They never dealt with the PCOS, and mostly were focusing on her allergies because that was kind of the symptom that was screaming at the time. And really, that's why she came to me. And we did organic acid testing. So we started looking for things like mold, just infections in the gut, things like that. We did a GI map, that is to really look at the health of the gut. Looks at parasites, worms, protozoa, bacteria, yeast. It also looks at the digestive system, and it looks at the integrity of the gut lining. Are you digesting your food appropriately? Are you really assimilating those vitamins and minerals, things like that? So, and we also did a Dutch test, which was hormones. We looked at those, and she was classic PCOS. Of course, I don't diagnose or treat necessarily, but I can see classic PCOS when I see it on a lab test. And there was just a lot of inflammation going on. We did food sensitivity testing, found out that she was reacting to certain foods. But the beautiful thing about that with the food sensitivity testing was that once we were able to bring out or take out of her diet the things that were actually culprits and causing a problem, then she could start bringing in other foods. She was like, oh my gosh, I thought I was reacting to blueberries. I can eat blueberries now. And like all of these, true things that she thought she was scared to eat, they weren't truly reactions at all, because with a sensitivity, you're actually getting a delayed reaction many of the times, and it's not anything that's immediate. but our reactions are coming after a meal, sometimes because of the additional stress on the intestinal lining. And so once we started removing a lot of those foods, we started working to heal the gut. She had a lot of gut infections going on, started working to heal those specifically. And then we found that she went to get allergy testing, and a lot of her allergies were even coming back pretty clear. Like the only true allergy that she had after we were doing this work together was a ragweed allergy, which is pretty amazing. She's able to sleep through the night better now. She has better energy throughout the day. I love stories like this because the great thing is this woman was an entrepreneur, and, you know, she didn't really have the energy or motivation to really work her business and grow her business or anything like that. But by the time we finished the work, and we're still working together now, we're addressing hormones now pretty in depth from the PCOS standpoint. But as you work through something like this with someone and you give them their life back, they can actually go out and be the human that they were created to be. So the cool thing is her business is booming now. She's looking at relocating and just growing her life, and things like that are just amazing. So it really shows how all of those tests are kind of tied together. And when you start to work on whatever is causing the problem, we didn't touch allergies. The truth is I didn't help her with anything from an allergy perspective, but yet her allergies are disappearing because her allergies were never the problem. We were able to get to the root of the problem to expose that.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. And that's like you said, that's what I'm about is, you know, getting to the root cause. Because if you're just playing at the surface level, then, you know, you're just treating the symptom, and you know, it's going to manifest somewhere else, or it's going to come back. Or a lot of times people get put on medications like thyroid medication, and then they feel better for a while, but then down the road, they feel bad again, and they got up the levels, and it's just an endless cycle of playing these games with medication instead of figuring out why your thyroid's messed up in the first place. And another aspect of that, which I haven't talked that much about on this podcast yet, and I would really love to get into, is that of the mental, or the mind, body, spirit aspect. And you say that there's certain, you know, people that you find coming to you, but a lot of them have a history of emotional pain, abuse, and trauma and things like this. Could you discuss that? Talk about that?
Yeah. So about 50% of the population I serve has some sort of autoimmune condition. And what I'm finding is that there's a connection between autoimmune conditions and emotional health, and not only autoimmune conditions. I'm not kind of separating that, but I do want to say that these emotional traumas that are not healed can so many times lead to autoimmune conditions. So if you think about that from a mind-body connection, then you think about what is actually happening when someone has an autoimmune condition, and that is that the body is being attacked, right? Our own tissues are being attacked. Our body is attacking our own tissues. So if you relate that to someone who has been a victim of trauma or a victim of abuse, then it's typically an emotional area that wasn't healed, where at some point in their life, they have felt attacked, whether that be physically, emotionally, verbally. So, and it's really interesting when you start tying some of these things together, because if you see what's happening with someone emotionally, then a lot of times what happens is they'll have a disease process that'll begin to manifest in their body that will play out what they keep playing in their minds over and over and over again. I'm under attack. I'm not good enough. Nobody likes me. I deserve this abuse, or all of these things, right? So if they're constantly replaying those things in their minds over and over, whatever we think about the most and believe, we're going to begin to manifest that in our life. So if we think and believe on a certain thing, then we're going to act that way. If I feel defeated and I feel like I'm a victim of abuse, then I'm going to carry a demeanor of defeat and that I am a victim of abuse. Therefore, my actions are going to dictate my results, right? So my result is going to be that I'm going to continue to be a victim of abuse. Even if I physically get rid of my abuser in my life, then I'm still playing out that same role in my mind, my emotions, my actions. So even if there's not a physical person in our life doing the abuse, then the body still needs to produce that because that's our beliefs. So the body begins to produce that through attacking its own tissue. So, and that's just one example, but so many times I work with people that have been through trauma, and I'll tell you this amazing process of healing that takes place when someone has dealt with trauma. And I've dealt with people with traumatic experiences that they've gone through for like 20, 30 years. I mean, it's stories that would be difficult for me to repeat here. But what I'm finding is that there is truly, when people are ready to heal, there's truly an emotional release that takes place. And they honestly will start with physical healing, and we'll do all the lab tests. We'll do all the things. They'll be taking the right supplements. They'll be doing the right exercise programs. And then all of a sudden, bam, there's a roadblock. And usually what happens is when we're detoxing and we're getting up things out of our tissue, our tissues have a cellular memory. So as we are bringing up those things, we're cleaning out certain organs, then those cellular memories are being pulled up and they're being brought back up. And what I find is during that process, during that cleansing and purging process, there comes a time where you have to deal with the emotional aspects. And if you don't deal with those pieces, then you're not going to find complete healing. So at that point, with my clients, I walk through the emotional aspects of healing. We discover the reasons for their pain, right? So many people have certain character traits that they may carry that are causing pain. And I don't mean just physical pain. I mean, any type of illness in the body, I would say, I can kind of label that as there's some sort of pain going on. And so when we start uncovering those things and dealing with those things and those emotional roots come up, I watch my clients go through days and days of detox as if we had them on a detox supplement and they were physically detoxing. Because the truth is there is a release, an emotional release that takes place where these emotions, these old buried emotions, they're literally coming up, they're being purged from the system and they're being pushed out of the body. So once we do that, I mean, it's like a miraculous makeover. They will become a brand new person. And I have people contact me, a week later and they say, oh my gosh, that was horrific. Like, that was not a fun process for me to go through, but I truly feel free now. I feel free from my past and feeling like I'm okay to move forward in my future.
Yeah, that's great. And something that you mentioned there about the autoimmune diseases, when I was in school, never heard of these diseases. Like they're unheard of. Nobody had these diseases that we talk about so much today that are autoimmune diseases. I mean, pretty much any disease you name nowadays can be related to some kind of autoimmune issue. And you related the autoimmune, reactions or, diseases to the mental emotional. And my question is, why is it now? Like, why is this happening now? Like, why? Because, we've always had mental emotional issues. Are they worse now? Is it some other health factor that's adding in that's making it worse? Is it a combination of everything? Like, why is all this stuff around this autoimmunity happening today and it wasn't happening 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah. I think it's the compounding effects of stress on the body. And we can look at stress in a lot of different ways, right? So there's emotional stress where we just kind of talked about those people of abuse. We can even think about job stressors or relationship stressors, or it's not only trauma that causes stress, but those emotional stressors that come from fear, anxiety, worry. Then we have the physical stressors. Those are things like trauma to the physical body. Maybe you had a car accident. Maybe you've got physical chronic pain in the body, something like that. And then you have your functional stressors, right? And those are things that I love and I'm passionate about because those are where we do the investigative work. right? We're looking at your hormones, your immune system, your digestion and detoxification pathways, your energy systems, your nervous system. So we have all those different things. I like to say what Hippocrates said, in that all disease begins in the gut. And I'll add to that, if all disease begins in the gut, then all disease must end in the gut, right? So then all healing must begin in the gut too. And the truth is that when we think about an autoimmune condition, I think about the integrity of the gut lining, because that is truly how these things are seeping into our system, and we're being exposed to them in our circulation. So I'll just kind of go through that and say, medications, toxins, herbicides, pesticides sprayed on our foods. We're slathering all this stuff on our skin, which toxicity is seeping in. We're going through chronic stress, not only through all the pathways that I just mentioned, but we also have EMFs that we're dealing with that we didn't have to deal with years ago. Billions of toxins are being dumped into our environment that were not 100 years ago, right? So a lot of these things are just getting worse. They're being compounded. And the truth is that our environment is super dirty. And I think that has a lot to do with why we're experiencing these things in higher levels. Not that they didn't exist years ago, probably that we didn't have the ability to diagnose those or didn't know what they were. And they were probably a lot less frequent simply because we weren't really exposed to as much toxic overload and stress as we are today. So once we have all of these stressors coming on, even something as simple as stress, it can mess up the integrity of the gut, right? So once we've done that, those tight junctions that actually hold things into the body, hold things in, like the foods, all of the proteins and things are being held into the gut lining, and the body is processing those. Well, we mess that up when we have all of this stuff bombarding the system all the time. Those tight junctions become weak and loose and leaky. So not only are we getting the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and things like that into our circulation as we should, but we're also getting those proteins and food particles and things like that. So what happens at that point is we develop those food sensitivities, right, that we've already kind of talked about, but the body begins to attack those things because they're in blood, they're in the blood, they're in circulation. Our immune system is super intelligent, and it's like, hey, what is this? I need to get rid of it. And as the immune system begins to attack that, then let's just take something like casein and gluten. Casein is a milk protein. Gluten is a protein from our wheat products or our grains. And those molecules are very similar in their makeup, but also they're very similar to the thyroid gland. So a lot of times that's how something like Hashimoto's can start, is the body begins to attack the thyroid gland, and we become sick. So once that happens, when we're talking about targeting our own organ systems from an attack standpoint, then that's autoimmunity, right? And that happens in different organs. Celiac disease is the gut, so it's just wherever your body has a weak link, a lot of times that's where you're going to experience that attack. And that's how I believe we have more autoimmune disease setting up today than we did years ago.
Yeah, there's just so many things that go into the mix now. And that makes it even harder to determine like what the underlying causes are for the individual. And that's kind of what you said, is kind of, you have to identify the weak link and address, what's causing that to break. And that's not always easy. But if someone were to come to you and they needed to lose some weight and get healthy, and they didn't know where to start, where would you have them start? If they could, where could they start on their own? If they were just to start reading some book or taking some action, what would you recommend that person do?
So what I love to do is start with nutrition and exercise. Some of the lifestyle things that, even someone like a personal trainer would teach, and, really a lot about that, Coach Strick. So, and you're like a big proponent of those two aspects, I know from your work. And I love to have people start there because it's so easy to follow a personal trainer. It's so easy to just learn how to clean up your diet. Sometimes you can do those things on your own. And just reading, one of my favorite books is The Metabolic Typing Diet. If you guys are not familiar with that, then go out there and get it. It's really amazing. It teaches you how to eat right for your metabolism. And I've actually created a short document where people can literally download, and it's almost like the Cliff's Notes of that guide. It really gives you a short quiz, and it allows you to determine your metabolic type and how to eat according to that, so you can increase your metabolism naturally. So that's a really great book to go out and just grab and really just learn the basics of healthy living. I have a book called Healed His Way. It literally talks about a lot of different ways, selfless plug, right? And it talks about a lot of the different ways that you can heal your body naturally. And I always tell people it's one of the lowest investment options to get an idea of all the different ways to just really create health in your body. Now, if you have done all of those things and you feel like you're living a perfect lifestyle, you're going to bed on time, your relationships are great, you're getting out in nature, your nutrition is on point, you're exercising every day, and you're still missing something, then it's really time to start doing that detective work. You could have food sensitivities. So that's one of the tests that I love to share with my clients. There could be food sensitivities. There could be pathogens in your gut. There could be leaky gut. We talked about that, and that was kind of one of the drivers to autoimmunity. And there could be a hormone imbalance. Sometimes if we have too much estrogen on board, you can forget it. You're not going to lose weight, right? So we got to make sure that those hormones are in balance. And we also need to make sure that, you have appropriate vitamins and minerals and nutrients, amino acids, that your body's even digesting its food appropriately. So I run, if in the perfect case, I would run about 5 different lab tests on my clients to help give them a really big overview picture of everything that needed to be done. But really, someone could systematically step through this. And I interview people and determine which tests they're going to need and which ones that are going to be most beneficial to them. Like if I was dealing with someone with autoimmunity, I know that there are probably food sensitivities. I know that there's probably an underlying gut issue, right? And I know that I want to make sure that their hormones are in balance. So those are kind of the 3 areas that I start. But the key is that if those are not enough, then we got to go a little bit deeper. We got to peel back some more layers of that onion. Maybe there's heavy metal toxicity like there was in my case. Maybe there's mold exposure like there was in my case. I was one of those crazy cases that just kind of had everything. And some people are like that. And the weaker your body gets, the more likely that you're going to be exposed to those things, and they're going to impact you in a negative level. And so saying that, if I could say anything to you today, that is, if you're barely sick, it's really the time to start, because your symptoms are definitely a sign that there's something more serious to come. So the longer you wait, the more you're going to have to really dig in to try to peel back a lot of those layers that really could have been resolved probably fairly easy if you're just having a few symptoms.
Yeah, that's great. I almost did the exact same thing in a solo podcast I did when I was referring to if people are living what they're trying to live a healthy life, and they're getting the sleep, they're eating, they're, moving their body, and they're still not seeing results, then it's time to, search out for help from someone that can help them, dig deeper and really search for the underlying cause. And another thing I would say is besides the pill for the ill mentality with people being negative, the second probably most negative thing with people's health is the fact that they have all these symptoms and they think they're normal. I did a corporate boot camp for a really long time, and I would go into the corporate boot camp and I would do assessment like every quarter. We just get their weight. We just use a cheap body fat thing. We get their waist measurement, their hip measurement, and we just did a simple fitness test. And we did that every quarter, just to, track them and see where they're at, so people could know, where they're at. And the very first time I went in there, I always ask, are you on medications or anything like that? And you would not believe the amount of people that when I asked them if they were on medications, they said no, or they dismissed it in a way. And then I would look at the paperwork, and in the paperwork, it would have cholesterol medication, blood pressure medication. And it was just like, these things were so normal for these people that they didn't even think to mention that they were taking this cholesterol medication, this blood. And so that's like the second, one of the most negative things around the mentality of the average person, is the fact that these headaches, this gut issue, whatever it is normal, and that I'll just pop a pill, Tylenol or something to fix this. What's your thoughts around that idea around these stomach issues, headaches, pains, all this is just like normal stuff that happens to everyone?
Yeah. So here's one thing I talk about in my book, and that is that we have a belief that we have to get sick before we die, that it's just a normal part of the aging process, you know? And I have to say that I completely disagree. I believe that it is a normal part of normal medicine, right? And that if you are in that conventional medical model, like you're taught that, you just have this disease process coming. You're probably going to get dementia because your mother had it. The truth is that there is a study called epigenetics. And we learned through that study that all of these genetic-based disorders are not necessarily, we're not doomed to get those, right? We only have about a 10% chance of developing those strictly due to genetics. The other major pieces that play a role in us developing these disease processes actually have to do more with lifestyle than they do your makeup in your body that's based on your family's genetics. So if you live a healthy lifestyle, you help your body, you support it with the right kind of food, you support the right mindset, you support the right exercise levels, and all those different things we've kind of touched on today. If you really support your body and go back to the basics of healthy living, then you're probably not going to have to worry too much about getting sick before you die. I think that's just the wrong mindset. And we go back to talking about what we were talking about earlier and getting the mindset. Your beliefs drive your actions. So if you believe that you have to get sick before you die, then guess what? You're probably going to. Yeah. But you can choose to believe the other side of the story. And when you start believing that, hey, I can be well for the rest of my life, then guess what? Those thoughts are going to drive the actions that you need to be doing to take place every single day in your life that are actually going to be driving health in your life. So guess what the outcome is? The result is always based on the action that you take. So if you're taking those positive actions to move yourself forward in health, then you're probably going to die in health and not necessarily in sickness. I always say that when it's time for me to go and I feel like going, I'm just going to sit in my favorite chair and I'm going to go. And I believe that I can do that, but I can do that in peace, knowing that I think I can make a choice to do that. I don't necessarily have, and that might be controversial to some people, and that's okay. Yeah. You can believe everything I say or not, but I believe that it should come down to a choice. We don't have to be miserable. And that's really my point. Whatever you believe is that we can choose to die in health instead of sickness.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to personal responsibility, and a lot of people are intimidated or fear that, and so they try to pass it off to a doctor. They try to pass it off to the excuse of genetics or whatever. And I mean, it happens all the time. I'm trying to train somebody in fitness, and they'll use the excuse of, oh, I'm too old, my knees. And it's just like, if you keep telling yourself that, like those weights are too heavy, or I can't do this, I can't get off the floor. It's like, if you keep telling yourself that, then eventually it's going to happen. And I truly believe that's why a lot of people get old and die, is just because they're telling themselves in their head that they're old. And then they have the whole external environment telling them, hey, you're old. Hey, get down off that ladder. You're old. Why are you doing that? You're going to fall. And it's just constant. I'm old. You're old. Verbiage in their head that eventually they are old and they can't get up from the chair and they have to have somebody to assist them. And then, before you know it, they're going down that slippery slope of not being able to take care of themselves. And like you said, that's not where I want to be, and that's not where you want to be. And I think that we have the power to affect that at least somewhat. And I'm not gonna pass my my health and fitness onto some excuse of, well, I'm old, so what's the use? And so that's kind of where I stand. But Chelsie, it's been an awesome interview. And if the listeners want to reach out to you or find more information about yourself, where should they go?
So probably the best way to reach me is my website. I'm under Chelsie Ward Wellness all over social media, Facebook, Instagram. My website is chelsieward.com, CHELSIEWARD.com. And my book is available on Amazon. It's Healed His Way, if you're interested in that. And thank you so much, Coach Strick. It's been an amazing opportunity to be with you today.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk soon. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Chelsie. There are a lot of things that can affect your health, and we discussed many of them in this episode. But one area I would like to highlight is that of the mental, emotional, and spiritual side. Unlike many disease processes that can be measured and tracked with lab tests, issues with our mental, emotional, and spiritual health oftentimes go overlooked by conventional medicine. Many times, our detectable health issues and diseases are actually manifestations or symptoms of mental, emotional, or spiritual imbalances. Chelsie also has a crazy idea of dying in health and not dying in sickness. I hope this idea has you thinking about what is possible with your own health and has helped you to realize that your thoughts and what you believe can determine the quality of your health and your life. And with that said, this is Coach Strick saying thanks for listening. And remember, when calories in, calories out doesn't work, that, my friend, is a calorie conundrum.
This podcast, including Coach Strick and guests, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects for the use of any information contained herein. Coach Strick and/or guests may recommend products or services in which they have a direct or indirect financial interest. To find out more, please visit www.calorieconundrum.com.